Hi folks, it's December 18th today, and I finally had a bit of time to do some equipment maintenance, so I thought I'd make a quick video of the Spitfire chipper, the 4090 chipper that we have, and you saw it in some of the other videos over the summer. Yeah, so what I like to do for equipment is I like to drain the fuel tank and run the motor until it stalls out, and then change the oil. So yesterday, funny story, yesterday I took the hopper off of the top here because I'm going to leave the hopper outside, but I want to bring the chipper into the garage for the winter storage. So I took the hopper off outside yesterday and with my daughter, and we brought the chipper in, and do you think this thing would start? No way. And that's very unusual for a Honda motor. So no matter what position I had the choke in, and checked the safety switch, and then I eventually pulled the plug out, and the spark plug was dry, which seemed a little bit unusual as well. Put some starting fluid in and put the plug back in, and it would still not start. So just taking a step back from it, and then it was like the light went on. So on this chipper, there's a safety switch right here, and when the hopper is off, this little switch prevents the motor from starting, and you can hear it making contact there. So once I just put a rag in there and just pushed down that switch so it would make contact, and then the motor started on the second pull, which was kind of funny for my daughter and I, because it filled up the garage full of smoke, of course, because it was a little bit flooded, and it looked like we were starting a two-stroke snowmobile in here for about 10 minutes. But it was running, and that was great. That was the main thing, so we had a little laugh about that. And then I ran it until it stalled, ran out of fuel, and drained the oil yesterday. So now just wanted to give you a little, show you, I guess, basically how to change the blades, and show you what my blades look like after maybe 30 to 40 hours of use up north, mostly balsam fir, cedar, maple, beech, so kind of a mix. Show you what the blades look like. One little thing that I do, I come from a mechanical and equipment maintenance background. I just like to put little notes on the equipment, so I don't always have to reference the manual. So I know this is going to take 10 W30 oil, it's 1.1 liters, and then when I install the blade bolts, I know to torque them down to 35 foot-pounds. So this area seemed, because this paint is still in really good shape, once the hopper is on, I'd say that area sees very little wear. So hopefully that'll stay there. If it doesn't, I'll just find another little spot to write it on. But yeah, that's just how I like to do things. It saves me from getting out the manual all the time. So I'll show you how to change the blades. Okay, so I'll just go over changing the blades on this. So there's two blades in this model, the 4090. I've got the emergency safety switch activated, and I know there's no fuel in it. I ran the motor out of fuel, so safety wise, there's no chance that turning this rotor is going to start the motor. Truthfully, there's a clutch under there, and the clutch is disengaged actually until it gets up to speed. So this is the blade here, 4 bolts, like a cap bolt there. And what I like to do is just with a pick or a bit of a sharp tool is clean out all the sap and debris that might be in here, so you get a good engagement with your socket. So just scratch around in there, and then I've got some compressed air here. Just blow those out. So I've gone ahead and just cracked those just to save a bit of time. They are snug on there. Oh, and another little trick, and I don't know if this is by design, but there's a hole in the rotor here, and then there's holes in the base. So what I like to do is just find when those line up and drop a big screwdriver in there, and that's a great way to hold that in place when you're loosening these off. The manual calls for 35 foot-pounds of torque when you retighten these. And like I said, I've already cracked them, so they're loose. They were definitely snug, and I know for a fact when I flipped them over last time that I did torque them to 35. They also mention in the manual to use an anti-seize compound on the threads, which I did. So you can see on the thread there, that's like a copper anti-seize that I use. And I imagine just by the nature of chipping, sometimes the material is wet, or just the moisture that's in the green wood. Enough moisture in there, if those ever got rusted in and seized in, you'd be in a bit of a jam getting those out. So don't want to make it any harder on yourself. So when I bought this machine, it was about a year ago this time, and we've had it for about a year. Anyway, before I put it into use, I wanted to flip the blades over. So these have been turned once. So this edge here was the edge that had been used by the previous owner, and that's the wear, and I wasn't sure how much he had used it. And then this edge here is what I've got after, like I say, 20, 30, I don't think it's 40 hours. So you can see there's a few little spots where there's a little nick, maybe you can catch your nail on it. I'm sure that they are still quite sharp, but just for what I do up there, I've got about 6 months to use this, so not a big deal to spend half an hour and either flip these over or change them out completely. It's the bottom side. So this here, that wear through there, that's when I purchased the machine. So I'm thinking a lot more hours were on it at that point. And then this is what I've put on it. Okay, so I will, just so happens when I bought this, it came with another set of blades and a spare belt. So this is a factory fresh blade, ready to go. It's nice because you can flip them if for some reason you needed to do this in the field. A few tools in a half an hour and you're back in business. For the amount of hours that I put on it last year, I probably will flip them again when I'm finished next year, just so that I'm always going up in the spring with a fresh set of blades. And then having a second set, I'm going to try to find a source to have those sharpened, so that I'm always ready with a set of fresh blades if I need them. So I don't have to reapply the anti-seize. It seems like there is a good coating on the thread still. The first time when I flipped these over, I did a more thorough job of cleaning all the threads and getting any debris out of there. This time everything looks really quite clean. So I'll just snug these down, and then I will grab a torque wrench to make sure that I get my 35 pounds. Okay, so I had to grab an adapter there, but I got my torque wrench, so I'm just going to tighten these down to 35 foot-pounds. Snug them down. Okay, and then do the one we've already changed. There it goes. Okay, I will just mention there is another part in here that's a wear item. I'll just move these blades. You can't exactly see it, but it's right here, and that's like a chip breaker. It's a hardened piece of steel, and that also can get flipped. And I believe you can flip that 4 times, giving you a new edge. It's not a sharpened edge, that's just like a rectangular piece of hardened steel. And you set a tolerance between your blade and that breaker, and that defines how big of a chip you're gonna get and how hard the motor's gonna work, basically. So Spitfire gives you those that tolerance, and I think it's 40 thousandths of an inch in between there. So they do supply with a manual. It's very good. It's got all the information in there that you need. I did flip that anvil or the chip breaker over last time, and there's really no wear on it at all. So I would say that, in my opinion, that's something that has to be done a lot less, and possibly it could be 2 to 3 blade changes before you have to look at that anvil. So I'm not going to touch that now. Yeah, I think that's about it. Blades are done. Oil's been drained. What I've done here, just in my garage, I've got some places in the ceiling there where I can do some lifting from. So I've just got a little come along, and I've lifted up the far tire just to tilt the machine to get all that oil out. And I did allow it to drain overnight. Of course, my rag fell into my bucket of oil, so it's just one of those days. But anyhow, I'll fill it back up with oil. I'll probably spray the rotor and the blades with like a storage oil. I've got kind of a waxy oil that you can spray on there, just prevent any rust from forming. And that's it. Like I said, the hopper and the chute are both outside. I have a carport. They're under the carport under a tarp. They don't need to be protected from the weather the way this unit does. So I am looking forward to in 3 or 4 months being back up on the property in the Bruce and putting this back to work. Okay, so the blades have been changed, and I just put the oil in. Get that guy out of there. I said it's a 10W30, and I use a synthetic oil in my Hondas. The other items, maintenance-wise, you have an air filter. It's got a foam pre-filter on it, so I generally just blow these out if they're dusty. If it's worse, then I'll give it a wash in soapy water. This is after a couple years, and the paper element filter is still in excellent condition, so that certainly doesn't need any attention. If it did, I'd blow it out as well, and if there's any kind of gas vapor stains on it, then I would replace it. But this one looks like it's in just like new condition. And there's the foam filter that just slides over top. So you've got the air filter. The other thing that you would have a look at on this machine, underneath between the motor and the rotor, there's a belt, because the rotor has a clutch assembly on it. So there's a belt in there, so you would check the belt tension. When I bought the machine, it had a spare belt. It had two belts actually. So I put a new one on it. I still have a new one, and then the one that I took off, I'm also keeping it as a spare because it is in fine condition. But I thought if I was going to start out, then I wanted to know that the machine was 100%, so I changed the belt. So oil, air filter, blades, belt, and then there are a couple grease fittings for the rotor. There's an upper and lower bearing. And the upper bearing, there's a grease fitting at the back, and the lower bearing, it's underneath, and you have to take the cover off. on the bottom. It's the same cover that you take off to check the clutch and the belt. And according to the manual, that bearing only needs 2 pumps of grease every 50 hours. So I am below that 50-hour mark. I don't want to over grease that bearing, so I'm not going to do any maintenance on that. Probably after the first or second trip up north and back, I'll probably be close to that 50 hours, and I'll give it a couple pumps of grease. But other than that, that really takes care of the maintenance, the seasonal maintenance. So for now, that's it. Hope you got a little insight out of the maintenance. It's very quick. You can probably do the blade change and the oil change in under an hour. It's really a well thought out piece of equipment. Anyhow, that's it for Mark from the Bruce. Actually, we're in the southern part of the country right now, southern Ontario. I've mentioned before we were also on the peninsula, or the Niagara Escarpment, I should say. We are on the Niagara Escarpment up here, but it's totally different than being up north. So myself and the family, we're definitely looking forward to getting up there and continuing with our adventure, dropping some trees, clearing the land, and getting ready for the big build. Okay, everybody, have a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and I'll see you in 2023.